This is Elisa Stern.
And this is Scott Ampleford from Dr. Puppet. And you're listening to Mark Who 42.
Welcome to Mark Who 42 here on Subspace Radio. My name is Mark Baumgarten. I am your host, and we are going to talk all about Rocky Horror, being that this year is the 50th anniversary of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the movie that came out after the stage play in London. We'll talk all about that. With me today are
Juan in Orlando
and
Vicky Jakubowski.
Hey.
Hi.
Well, the reason I introduced you quickly is because we have a little bit of news to take care of, and Juan is going to handle that. Juan, what is the news that we need to discuss?
Well, sadly, we've got some bad news. Ralph Sinensky, who I always keep saying Zelensky or type Zelensky, but it's Sinensky, passed away at 102. Now, who is Ralph Sinensky? You probably know him if you don't. He actually directed several Star Trek episodes, and in fact, in the second season, he was on regular rotation with Joseph Penvey and Mark Daniels for directing Star Trek. The episodes he directed was This Side of Paradise, Metamorphosis, Bread and Circuses, Obsession, Return to Tomorrow, and Is There No Truth in Beauty? He also directed a part of the Tholian Web, but unfortunately, he got taken off and replaced because for something, as I understand, it was not his fault. The thing was that the spacesuits were not ready, and that delayed in filming, and the new producer, Fred Freidenberg. Now, this is how I understand. If I got that fact screwed up, please correct me. But at the same time, if he was actually interviewed by at least two Trek podcasts that I know of, the Inglorious Trexperts and the Enterprise Incidents. If you do a search on that, you'll find interviews. I mean, and this is a few years ago when the man was in his 90s. He had a clear memory of, what he did and planning. He also directed a lot of other TVs. He directed the pilot and maybe first episode of Dynasty, among other things, in his varied career. I know he directed the Dynasty pilot with George Papard in it. I don't know if he did the final first episode with John Forsythe.
Okay.
One memorable story was, although he liked, I think, overall the episode, when he did Bread and Circuses, he was kind of disappointed he had to cut back during the fight scene, the big gladiator scene, because he had to switch between what was in the arena and the conversation Kirk was having with the two other guys, the proconsul and Merrick. And, he wanted to focus, he would have wanted to focus more on the arena, but that was the script and he gave it. Anybody has any more questions or had enough? I mean, check him out. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you do a search for him, he used to have a website where he talked about all of his directing stuff. Okay. But as far as I know, he is the last, again, to the best of my knowledge, the last surviving director of original Trek.
You think about how long ago Trek was. Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people from the show are probably still with us. Some of the actors, some of the writers.
Well,
David Gerald's still alive, and we got the
to my knowledge, there are only three writers that are still alive: David Gerald,
right,
Norman Spinrad, and Chet Richards, who co-wrote the Tholian Web. And a little trivia. There is sadly a writer who's dead, but I'm going to be surprised that you're going to find out that this person actually wrote a Star Trek episode. Sherry Lewis. She co-wrote The Lights of Zatar.
I think I knew that, actually. I think I did know that.
Yeah, and she wanted to cast herself as Mira Romaine, or at least that's what I've heard.
Okay, so on that note, we're going to try to lift this up a bit again. Like I said, we are doing the 50 years of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And Vicky, take it away.
Well, I'm going to start off with, all about me, because why not? Okay. My history with Rocky Horror Picture Show, I first learned about it, and it was either like 79 or 80, because I watched another movie that referenced it. And then being the precocious kid I was, I had to try and find out more. Now, of course, everyone needs to remember, this was back before the internet. This is when the internet was still called ARPANET, and you only had access to it in academic and government settings. So, I had to search for things the old-fashioned way, in those little dusty books in the back of a library. but I did some exploring and some studying and was able to get some clips. And I remember when I was when I moved to Hawaii and I got my hands on a bootleg VHS.
Yeah, you're not the only one. You're not the
I'm
only
not
one who
the
had one of
only one,
those.
because it wasn't released in the US for a very long time. And I believe it was released in the Asian markets. So it had both Korean and Chinese subtitles, which just made it even funnier.
It was.
And then the first time I saw it on stage was a midnight showing in 1988. And at the University of Hawaii, we had once a month, we would do 2 showings, 1 week in a month, in the science lab, where we did strange and unusual cult films every weekend. But 1 week in a month was devoted to Rocky Horror Picture Show. And you know that you have made it when you're helping your friend find the right heels for his size 12 feet so that he can be Frank-N-Furter next weekend.
Very cool.
And so I even remember the first time I took my now husband to go see it. And I even introduced it to our son when he was fairly young,
good.
but so I'm a massive fan.
Yeah.
And of course I know I'll call it the West Coast version, because if you go see Rocky Horror Picture Show and you see audience participation, it varies from city to city with some similarities. And I learned all of my tricks and everything when I was living in Hawaii, which is a little bit different than if you go to the Waverly in New York. So that's my starting bit, is that I love it.
That's great. Juan, did you ever go to the Grove Cinema to see it? As I did.
No, I did, but
Grove.
I didn't. I did go to the Grove Cinema to see a couple of, at least one movie that was hard to get to, called Light Years, a French animation movie, which we could do a show on. But I need to say, you might have been at my first showing of Rocky. It depends if you were estranged from TRI, the TARDIS Repair Incorporated Club, because
I probably did see. I think I was. I'm not 100% sure.
It was the June 1989 meeting, and unfortunately, I'll be dating myself, because the thing was, at that meeting, Dan Harris loaned us his beta of Rocky Horror from On TV. And the reason I remember the date was that the night before, I had gone to grad night. I spent the whole night at Disney with my high school friends or associates. And then after we got back, I mean, I was still kind of hyper and awake, and I went to see Rocky, because that's what we couldn't do the callbacks, because we were at a public library where we held the club meeting.
Damn it.
TARDIS Repair. But were you there? I forgot if you were there or not. I know that Laura Palmer was there.
I might have been there, especially if Dan was the one who brought the recording. But I saw it at the Grove. I also, later in life, there was a Draft House movie theater thing on 84 up in Fort Lauderdale at one point, and I saw it a few times there. But, and this is the cool thing, and Juan, you weren't there, but this was kind of cool. October 27th, 2000. We're talking the 25th anniversary. We're talking about Tampa Theater in Tampa, Florida, and we're talking about Sal Piro appearing.
I have a thing about Sal Piro, but not right now.
I was there. That was an amazing night. You had the larger than life crew of the doing performance, and it was incredible. And the fact, because like Sal Piro, I when you saw Fame, the movie Fame, he was in it. He played himself in it, and I got to meet the gentleman in 2000. He's no longer with us. He's no longer with us. It's recent, but yeah, that was fun.
Interesting you bring him up. One of the factors that made me suggest this as a topic was one, we're ripping off the Incomparable podcast. You can come after me, Jason.
I don't think we're ripping them off.
Erica,
we're going to say
I'm trying to get his attention. I'm trying to start a feud here. And
okay.
No. I'm joking because I love Jason Snell and I love Erica Ensign, who ran it. Anyway, so the thing is, they did a show on it, but also 2 weeks ago, I saw a documentary, 2 weeks from recording, I saw a documentary called A Strange Journey, the story of Rocky Horror, directed by Linus O'Brien. Yes, he's the son of Richard O'Brien. And what's amazing, and maybe I should talk about it now. Everybody except Meatloaf and Charles Gray is still alive, was on this documentary. It's kind of amazing, 50 years later. And these are people involved in everybody, with the exception of Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick, were also involved in the original West End production.
Yeah.
And as I don't, at this time, I don't know. It showed up the independent theater circuit. I don't see it streaming anywhere, but right now it's 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. One of the selling points I told to someone, Julia Langston, I said that Richard O'Brien sings all the songs acoustically. Not all the songs, actually most of the songs acoustically at some point in the documentary as it goes on. And it goes from West End production all the way up to the present.
Nice.
Very nice. Okay, Vicky, let's go. Tell us
Yes.
what do
Okay.
we need to know
So,
about Rocky Horror
First,
Picture Show?
it's almost impossible without talking, as long as the movie is itself, about everything that goes on in this, because it is, in my opinion, a mix of Roger Corman with Hammer Films, all the science fiction B movies of the 50s and 60s, throw in a dash of rock and roll, and you've got Rocky Horror Picture Show, which, of course, originally was a stage production. It made it all the way to the West End and then to Broadway. And believe it or not everyone realizes it, but the stage production was relatively interactive. When they did it the first time in Broadway, they did it in more of a cabaret type setting than a traditional theatrical production. And so they actually had actors going through the audience. I mean, you see that more now, but this was unheard of in the early 70s. And it's funny, I remember reading a book, and the book was published in the early 80s. It was all about cult movies. And Richard O'Brien was talking about, he had just been fired, I think, from Jesus Christ Superstar, because he had creative differences about how to play King Herod, which, if you've ever seen Jesus Christ Superstar, King Herod is over the top. I can't believe anyone can play it too over the top. And so he was out of work, and he's like, you know what? Rock and roll needs to be rock and roll. What the hell's wrong with this theatrical producer who doesn't know the first thing about rock and roll? So almost kind of a revenge, boredom, wanting to show him how it's done, he started creating what has now become Rocky Horror Show. And by the way, I just heard they're going to do a Broadway revival starring possibly Luke Evans as Frank-N-Furter. So it's kind of like, ooh, well, this sounds fascinating.
It does.
Although, Vicky, I got two things that come up with that. Of course, you were completely right about the West End thing, and about it was a cabaret style, because the first theater I think they ever did it in was pretty tight, so they did have that interaction with the audience.
Wasn't Nick Courtney in the original production?
No, not in the original production.
No,
he was in a future production. I think after the android invasion.
Gotcha.
So he played Nick Courtney played the narrator.
Yes. Yeah.
But the thing that the documentary brought up was that Rocky first played in the U.S. and L.A. Now, here's the thing. They went to New York. They did go on Broadway, but I think they only played a small amount of shows because, it seems like the Broadway crowd was not going to let Rocky, in its initial Broadway production. It's been played on Broadway since. I saw it on Broadway in 2001 with Dick Cavett as the narrator, but I think he was the only big name that I
want
would
to see that. I want to go back in time and see that.
Yeah, but I think I missed out on seeing Joan Jett playing Magenta.
Wasn't the LA production where they kind of picked up Meatloaf? Because he wasn't, Meatloaf was just a stage actor. He had been in Hair with Tim Curry before, or was it with Richard O'Brien? I forget. But he'd been in stage productions with both of those actors beforehand. And when he first performed in it on stage, he played both Eddie and Dr. Scott. Kind of a thing they did was they played both characters. But in the movie, they decided not to.
Well, yeah, they're never on stage or on screen at the same time.
At the same time.
But the thing is, I think Meatloaf was playing Dr. Scott, and I think there's a story. I think it was on the VH behind the scene that he freaked out of being in stockings, or he freaked out at some point that he actually walked out of the rehearsal or whatever. But then he calmed down and things were all right. I think that was in Behind the Music.
The 70s was a weird time.
I want to say something. If you go onto YouTube, Steve Miller, I'm not sure who he is, but Steve Miller hosted about 7 years ago a full live performance of Rocky Horror Show sometime between 1990 or 91.
Ooh.
Anthony Head was Frank-N-Furter and Craig Ferguson was Brad.
Yes.
And I just watched that. Wow. The quality is not great, but it's still a great number.
Now, to make a Brad-like comment, he's not the guy who's the deputy chief of staff in the current administration, is he? I can't imagine him having that much fun.
Anyway.
I will tell you that even because I've seen stage productions, and of course I've watched the movie more times than I can count, both in theaters and ever since I got my first bootleg copy. But I feel like there's no such thing as a bad Rocky Horror Picture Show, because as long as you're giving it gusto, it is a hoot. You're singing along, you're doing things. I mean, I remember when I started getting up on stage during the shows, and I would switch back and forth between Janet and Magenta. I thought that the Janet character was perfect. And
Wait a minute. If you went up there as Janet, were you wearing the outfit? Were you wearing or not wearing the outfit? Really?
Yes.
I know people. I have friends who've
what
done
the
that.
Butler saw. And so, if you're familiar with British comedy, which I know some of you are, it just when I was 16, I spent the entire time in a Teddy for a 2-hour production show. No, my father did not go see that one.
No.
My mother thought it was best.
Okay.
But it just, with Rocky Horror, it was just so much fun. And I got to meet Barry Bostwick when he came to Reno for a Comic-Con that was here a few years back. He was just so sweet. And it just, every interview I've seen, even Susan Sarandon talks about it, despite getting pneumonia and getting really sick. She credited it in an interview years and years ago about how it kind of helped break her. She was raised as a good little Catholic girl, and she was in Hollywood, and she'd been on stage, but she hadn't really done anything powerful yet. And this kind of helped her break her mold, and she credits it with really changing her career trajectory. And now she's got a couple of Oscars. She's been in tons of movies and shows, and it's really nice to see these people who have then created these great careers. And of course, Richard O'Brien was smart. He's always kept royalties, so he has always been able to. He makes money off of everything everyone does. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Smart boy, don't give up your royalties. In the few moments we have left of our first, a couple of fun facts, or a couple of interesting facts. So it opened in the UK on August 14th, 1975, and in the US a month later. It flopped, as all good movies will. I mean, it really flopped. It bombed.
Who had the idea to put it as a midnight movie?
I think it was a combination of the creative staff, like, well, let's make it a midnight movie. It is discussed in the documentary, but I think it might have been the director and the producers, whatever.
And of course, midnight movies were really a thing back then. I feel like outside of a few places, they just don't exist like they used to. Same with the independent movie theaters. I feel like they're becoming the dinosaurs of our lives. It was so great to go and see midnight showings of strange and unusual movies, or movies.
Fritz the Cat.
Yes. I mean, I first saw Hammer films in midnight showings when I was in middle school. Well, that and PBS on the weekends for some reason showed Hammer films.
They did, but, some of them. Yeah, there was a package, I think.
Some of them. And of course, this has a Hammer connection because they filmed it at Oakley Court Castle, which is known to be in multiple Hammer films. And the original title was They Came from Denton, which Richard O'Brien got the idea from all the Beam science fiction movies. It came from outer space. So it was that sort of thing. And someone had said, that just doesn't ring. And when he called it Rocky Horror Picture Show, or Rocky Horror Show, but he kept the city named Denton, which is the most white bread, I'm going to say middle America, which is not actually right because it's English originally, but it's kind of like how Tim Burton viewed the suburbs in the 80s. It's a perfect thing to make fun of these very white bread, boring milquetoast people who happen to walk into the best party ever.
Yeah. Rocky Horror Picture Show, which the stage shows. I'm so happy it's coming back to Broadway. I've got to figure a way to see that. Juan, you were very lucky to see it in 2001 there. Who was, do you remember who was in it? Anybody big in it? Besides Dick Cavett?
Who knows? Maybe somebody from there went on to be famous, but I feel bad. If I got a playbill, I might have lost it. I mean, ironically, it was 2 weeks before 9/11. I went there.
Oh.
It was the thing is, the Worldcon was in Philadelphia. I hadn't been to New York. I'd been to Philadelphia, so I flew to New York first and then took the train to Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Worldcon that year. I wish I knew. I mean, who knows? Maybe there were some future stars. Now I only remember Dick Cavett, who hated the fact that people kept saying he had no neck. He really was.
Oh, okay. And on that note, we've got to take a break here on Mark Who 42. We'll be back with myself, Mark Baumgarten, Juan Sanmiguel, Vicky Jakubowski. We'll be right back after this.
Don't go away. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Mark Who 42 after this.
Toycast is back. We are talking toys once more here on the Geekcast Radio Network's Toy and Action Figure podcast. From breaking into the display case to our toy topic talk and the brand new Origins in Toy collections, where we get guests to tell us their toy story of how they got into toy collecting. Toycast is the only toy podcast you will ever need. Find us on geekcastradio.com and any podcatching client you choose to use. Now go forth, transform and transcend your toy collecting today while listening to Toycast.
You are listening to Mark Who 42's Universe.
I'm Mark Baumgarten. With me are Vicky Jakubowski and Juan Sanmiguel. We're celebrating 50 years of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Vicky, why don't you take over again?
Yes, I'm going to take over. So, ironically, the time warp is, Richard O'Brien needed another song to kind of act as filler within the original play production, and he wrote this. It was like the very last song he wrote to go into the stage production. So it's funny because it is, while I may prefer Science Fiction Double Feature as my favorite song from the show, everyone knows the Time Warp. I don't care who you are. You've seen it on TV. You've seen it in another movie. You've heard it somewhere. You've danced it at a Halloween party. It doesn't even matter if you know nothing about Rocky Horror Picture Show. You have heard this song. Dr. Demento used to play it all the time. It's one of those things that it's amazing how much this itty bitty little film that struggled in the beginning is so much a part of our popular lexicon now. It's amazing how many people know about it. And that's Rocky?
There are two conventions in the Maryland area that Shore Leave and Encounter at Farpoint, which would have a dance called 10 Forward. And they would always play the Time Warp. And John Scalzi, who's been DJing dances at Worldcon, always plays the Time Warp at some point in the dance. So it is a convention tradition, if you have a dance, to play the Time Warp at some time.
So I want to do a quick rundown for people who don't know, all the people who were in this. Tim Curry was Frank-N-Furter. He originally was Frank-N-Furter on the West End. And a story that I have to tell because I've heard it so many times. I'm assuming it's real because he even mentioned it in the CBS interview he did a couple weeks ago. And that was, he came up with the accent instead of Frank-N-Furter having the German accent that everyone expects Dr. Frankenstein to have. He decided to play around with it. He heard someone on a bus in London using that extreme posh London accent that like the Queen Elizabeth herself uses. And he's like, he threw it into that and he says, and then I threw in a little bit of my mom's phone voice and came up with Frank-N-Furter's over exaggerated London posh accent, which to me is perfect. It's so much better than if it had been German. That would have just been good, but instead he made it great. Susan Sarandon, that we already mentioned, she actually was dating Barry Bostwick, and they went into auditions together, and they were selected together. No, their relationship did not last. As Barry Bostwick says, did not last. The final show where they're all doing the rock kicks in their high heels and stepping on each other's feet. Barry Bostwick played Brad Majors. Richard O'Brien, who wrote the show and, of course, helped bring it to movies, is Riff Raff, the handyman, Magenta's brother / maybe something else. He's just love that character. Patricia Quinn plays Magenta. Ironically, she used to be she still did some high work, but she used to be a high stage actress, a Shakespearean actress. And then she did this on a whim. And that's all anyone remembers her for.
Wait, she did appear in Doctor Who and Dragonfire.
Yeah, in Dragonfire, definitely.
Right.
Definitely, she did.
She's one of Kane's underlings, and I think she's Kane's lover, or she's got a big crush on Kane.
Yeah, no, she was in that. That was actually a big thing. I remember that was one of the stunt casting that JNT liked to do.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So, and then little Nell Campbell, she was Columbia, the tap dancing groupie. And I will tell you that tap dance is harder than it looks. And as a former dancer, and I did used to tap, it is a tricky little thing to do that just right and fall on cue. So Jonathan Adams came in as Everett Scott. He was brand new to the cast. Peter Hinwood was Rocky Horror. Now he was a model, but they felt that neither his singing nor his vocal was good enough. So they actually brought in somebody, and I didn't know this name until I looked it up this weekend. Trevor White did all the singing as Rocky. Peter did his own grunting, but any word spoken or sung was done by Trevor White, because they just felt that Peter Hinwood was not, his voice was not up to snuff. He was hired for his looks and his looks only. I did hear an interesting story that he became an antiques dealer and made millions of dollars off of that.
I can't confirm or deny that, but I will say he did show up on the documentary, because I heard,
Nice.
I thought I heard from somebody in the local Orlando cast, which is named the Rich Weirdos. I thought I heard he doesn't like doing public appearances for some reason. I could be wrong about that.
Interesting.
Because MegaCon has had a good chunk of the cast. I mean, they've had Barry, Patricia, Nell. I don't think he does conventions. So
Can I interject just for a second? Patricia Quinn played Blast in Dragon Ball. The main villain's name was Kane, played by Edward Peel.
Nice.
And note to people to look for our old episodes. Tony Asoba, who we interviewed, was in it as Krakauer. So we've actually had someone on the show that was in it with, so putting
Everything
it there.
comes back. Everything's got 6 degrees of
YouTube
separation
channel.
from who?
YouTube channel, classic playlist. It should be there.
Love it. So of course Meatloaf was Eddie.
Mhm.
And this is before Meatloaf became Meatloaf. He had been in stage productions like Hair, and had done some other things, but he didn't become the rock god that everyone knew him as later until the 80s. So, and I have heard many stories where he's talked about how nervous he was to ride the motorcycle through the set, because that is not a big set, and motorcycles have power, and that was a big old motorcycle. So, but I love the way that he has in other TV shows, because I believe he appeared in A Cold Case. Now, he would always play a different character. He wasn't playing Eddie, but he and Barry Bostwick have been in a couple of TV shows. I think he even appeared on an episode of Spin City with Barry Bostwick.
I think you're right. I think
and then I heard, I actually, the only episode of Glee I ever watched, because I know I'm a weird person, I don't like Glee, but I have my reasons. But the Rocky Horror Picture Show episode I did watch, and both Barry Bostwick and Meatloaf were on it, and I thought that was great. And sadly, Meat has left the building.
Did you ever see the show Robin of Sherwood with Michael Praed and Jason Connery? With Jason Connery, the first 2 episodes of the Jason Connery season and the last 2 episodes, Richard O'Brien played a sorcerer, a bad guy.
I'd also point out that he was Timothy Dalton's henchman in Flash Gordon.
Yes, yes, he was.
Another classic.
However, I don't know if I'd use the word henchman, because Timothy Dalton, Prince Baron wasn't a bad guy.
Prince Baron was one of Flash's allies.
Exactly. So he wasn't a henchman. He was an associate. But he was in there, because I went to see the Flash Gordon. There was a big showing for its anniversary a couple of months back. I saw it at the Gateway, which immediately after they showed the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And while I was in Flash Gordon, people were reciting the lines, just getting ready to recite the lines.
It's also become quite a cult classic.
Yeah.
Now the last big actor, of course, being
so you know what that makes it?
Ray.
You know what that makes it? It makes it Richard O'Brien's late night double feature picture show at RKO. We played that. Never mind.
Anyway, so okay, the last main name in it is Charles Gray, who was the criminologist
Mhm.
who also shows us how to do the time warp. Interesting note, and I didn't learn this until a couple of years ago. Richard O'Brien actually was in talks with Vincent Price to play that role in the movie. Vincent
Ooh.
Price apparently was a huge fan of the stage production, and he really wanted to do it. But because of delays and shooting schedules and other things he was doing, he couldn't get away. He was already
Oh.
contracted. And so I mean, just imagine if Vincent Price had done that, that would have been really wild. Although Charles Gray brought the right amount of fish out of water.
I can't see it. Really, the cast was perfect. I wouldn't have changed anybody.
I've heard some stories that Charles Gray claimed at the time he didn't quite know that what they were doing. And so he was kind of surprised when he saw the finished product because, of course, he was a Shakespearean actor. He had
Yeah.
been in James Bond. And then suddenly, boom, he's in Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think if it had been a hit off the bat, maybe he wouldn't have made that statement. But I'm sorry, he's just perfect because it's Blowfield is the criminologist.
Yeah.
The thing is, he was the most famous member of the cast
Yeah.
for doing
Mhm.
Diamonds Are Forever. And he later, he did other things, but the most interesting thing he did post was playing Mycroft Holmes in the Granada production of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, he did 2 episodes, The Greek Interpreter and The Bruce Parrington Plans.
Very cool. And of course the director was a very young Jim Sharman. I kind of feel like he really did a lot of unusual type things that seemed to be his area, and he didn't, other than Rocky Horror Picture, other than doing Shock Treatment, the sequel to this, which I love Richard O'Brien, but Shock Treatment is best watched not
Eh.
watch
We could
it
do a
not
whole
sober. It's
well,
easier.
we could do a whole show on shock treatments. I don't.
Yes.
No offense to
But-
shock treatment, but
It was no Rocky Horror Picture Show. It just wasn't.
No.
So
Yeah, Richard O'Brien didn't hit success twice in that one.
So, favorite scenes. Everyone's got to have a favorite scene.
Any scene with Meatloaf. Which is, yeah.
Ironically, my favorite scene is with Meatloaf. Sort
Okay.
of. It's the table scene.
Ooh, yes.
And it's my understanding that not only did they not tell everyone what was under the tablecloth, so the first time they're seeing it is kind of jolting,
Mhm.
but they actually made him out of real meat, and it rotted throughout the day of filming.
That's gross. That's
So,
gross. It's funny, but it's
the
gross.
phrases I've heard in various interviews are, it was cold because the
Mhm.
castle was leaking, and had holes in it, and the heater they got caught fire, and it smelled. It was
Gotcha.
cold and it smelled, and that was the production of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Juan, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite scene. I do have a favorite callback because when I had friends in the Rich Weirdos, and it played in Orlando Universal movie theater regularly, so I would go up
Yes.
there and see
At City
friends.
Walk, right?
Yeah, at City Walk.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Great.
a few years ago the theater got bought out by another chain, and well, the sad thing is they always had a good house. Every time I would go there was substantial amount of people, substantial amount of virgins, people who had never seen it before. So shame on them. But so I got into routine because there is a callback kind of towards the end. I believe it's after Frank and Rocky are dead, and there's something that Riff says, which the callback is, oh, now this movie makes sense. But the counter callback is, no, it doesn't. And me and the cast member who said the first line and I we'd have a routine that we do that. So again, I made friends with that. I also won a trivia contest. During Halloween, they decided, hey, let's have some of the regulars. We'll do a trivia contest, and I won a local artist's CD, a very good artist, Mark C. But
Mhm.
one of the things I like when they asked me a question, so what were Brad and Janet listening to on the radio when they drove up? And I knew, I said Richard Nixon's resignation speech. And I like how the host just said, nerd, because I said it that way, exactly that way. So I guess that's my favorite parts.
I love that.
I'm not amazed, but I always am fascinated how the audience participation became, because I'm
Yeah.
assuming when it came over here and it flopped, it wasn't until the midnight movies that they probably got the fans to come in and do that. At least, I mean, I don't think,
Yeah.
coming into a 3 o'clock movie, a matinee on a
I've
Saturday
heard a
at
couple of
3 would
different
have it.
rumors
Yeah.
and stories. There are some people who say, oh, well, when it started becoming a midnight movie in the UK, people started talking back to it. And then
Mhm.
other people say, no, it was really when it went to the Waverly and it was playing every night for how many years that it kind of evolved. This person yelled this person yelled that. This person happened, that person, and it evolved over the course of the year of midnight movie.
In the documentary, somebody said that the first callback was during when they get out of the car and they put the newspaper and they said, why don't you buy an umbrella, you cheap bitch, or something around
Yes.
those lines.
Yeah.
And that started it. But and also the callbacks have evolved. I mean,
Yeah.
a friend, Julia Langston, who used to be part of a cast, said that she understands why they won't make Karen Carpenter jokes anymore. But I told her
Ooh.
Yeah.
there's a scene. Well, nobody would know. Unfortunately, young people won't know who Karen Carpenter is.
That's
Well, there's
you're
that
right. You're
too.
right. They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
But also it's evolved because there's a scene when they're singing "Damn It, Janet," and they are walking around in the cemetery. Now people, when they pass by a statue, they yell, "Don't blink."
I love it. I don't know. I feel like it needs to constantly evolve
It has
because
to.
it's an organic kind of creature. And there might be some things, okay, y'all bring your newspapers and we bring our squirt guns and you bring
And the
toasted
rice.
No.
And you-
Okay, that is a thing that's changed. At least with the rich weirdos, they had rules. One of the rules was no wet props. Wet actors are okay, but no wet props. And do not throw stuff at the screen. When you throw stuff, go up
Oh,
and
that's
back.
true.
Up and
okay.
back.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
And then there's a joke when they explain no open flames and half the cast leave. And they have to, because they must have had a bad fire at a theater at one point.
I'm sure.
Unfortunately, you don't
I
make
would
up
not
rules
want
like
to have
that.
to clean up a theater after Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well,
I
wait.
would not want to be the cleaning crew.
Mark, wasn't there a story in the Miami Herald that I remembered that the Grove Theater really got trashed every time they did Rocky?
Yeah.
I thought I heard somewhere that
It
somebody
was-
fell through a roof or a
Oh,
ceiling.
that I don't
See, and
remember.
I could
I
see
don't-
that.
I don't seem to remember that.
That is a distant memory that I cannot verify. So
Okay.
Some
It
of
never
the
happened
older
when I was
movie
there.
theaters, which they had catwalks, just the way you would in a traditional theater.
Yeah.
And I remember when movie theaters had catwalks because that's how they would change things and stuff. And now these days, you just bring one of those cherry pickers and you just zoom on up. But they used to have catwalks, especially in some of the older, bigger movie theaters, especially on the East Coast. I remember them. And let me tell you how easy it is to fall off a catwalk, whether it's above the ceiling or below the ceiling. It's actually very easy to fall. It is a known problem.
Yes. Yes. That is
It's
true.
why they now all have extra railings and everything, because a few too many theater people have died over the centuries.
Ouch.
It's funny. I remember sometimes when I would see productions, there would be I don't know if I would call it censored per se, because they didn't take too many things out. But they would leave out superheroes at the very end, which is a song that they sing as the ship is going off into space. And then another spot is they cut the Frank-N-Furter with Brad and the Frank-N-Furter with Janet. And I remember the first time I saw that, I'm like, this is confusing. Something's missing. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it the very first time. And so depending on which copy we got to show at the midnight showings at the University of Hawaii, we would get both versions.
I'm kind of surprised they cut out the Brad and Janet and Frank scene. I've always seen that. I did.
The ones in the bedrooms.
Right, that's what I meant. I'm
Mhm.
surprised they would cut those out. I mean, I remember when we saw it, that was one thing that Dan Harris said, that this copy that we have will have superheroes. So I can't remember. I don't know if they discuss it in a documentary. Somebody knows the answer of why sometimes you got to see superheroes.
I'm sure somebody was like, "Oh my God, we can't have this." Or worse, that's too long. Let's just chop this out. It'll be fine.
Well, the thing is, of superheroes, it shows them. I mean, the thing is, if you cut out superheroes, all you see is them running out of the castle. And then if you cut out superheroes, then you go directly to the Lost in Space finale with the narrators. So
yeah,
superheroes kind of implies that they did survive somehow, or made it
At
clear
least
that
some
they
of them did.
survived. Well, actually, you know that they did live, because when the narrator is going through the dossier, I think he only had the pictures of everybody who survived, because I don't think he had
Oh.
pictures. Well, no, you see Brad and Janet and I think
Yeah.
Dr. Scott. I
Yeah.
don't think he has the pictures except that one blow up of the rest of the cast in the wedding scene, where they have it circled. Because if people don't know, Tim Curry, Richard O'Brien, and Patricia Quinn and Nell were playing other parts in the wedding scene. Oh, and another Doctor Who connection, I recently found out. I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who played the Collector in the Sunmakers was a photographer who said, "Say cheese" or whatever.
Oh, nice. Oh, and don't forget, they also had real Easter eggs. There were Easter eggs hidden around on the statues and things. I don't remember why, but it was just one of the funniest. One of the funniest things is, here, let's just stick Easter eggs on the feet of the statues in the laboratory. I think there are some in the ballroom too when they're doing the time warp.
Oh, and the actor who played the Collector was Henry Wolf.
Excellent. Well, just a side note, I have learned that Steve Martin auditioned to play Brad. This would have been post-Magician at Disneyland, but pre-Saturday Night Live.
But it was after he was writing for the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
After
so he had already
done.
He already had comedy in the system.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
but he didn't make it, of course. And then I understand that, and Mick Jagger, I actually saw an interview where he said it, and he fought to get Frank-N-Furter because he thought it fit his brand.
It would have. I see him.
It would have actually. And by the way, if you watch Tim Curry when he hosted Saturday Night Live, and I want to say it was the late 70s, he does a bit where he plays Mick Jagger, and he does it beautifully.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
you can see that. Yeah.
They also mentioned in the documentary, I think they considered Bowie for Frank-N-Furter. But they decided to go. They decided to stick with Tim, which was the right call.
Mm-hmm.
I think so too. Okay, so we only got a couple minutes. So last thoughts, guys. What do you think, Mark? What's your last sentence about Frank-N-Furter, or Rocky, or Brad, or Janet?
Damn it, Janet. That's all I'll say.
I wanted to bring up something that was also mentioned in the documentary, but it also was implicitly. It was really remembered the bad days of the 70s, and look, we're all to the best of my knowledge, we're all heterosexual here, but it was a real safe space for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
In fact, one guy in the documentary said, the reason I'm not dead right now is because I hanged out at the Rocky Horror Show from midnight till 4 o'clock in the morning because they showed it multiple times. And that kept me off the street because I would have gotten into big trouble. So
people forget what the 70s was like and what it really was. And I will say that I think Rocky Horror Picture Show deserves its place in the American lexicon. And I am so proud that the Library of Congress actually made it a official film to be saved and preserved for perpetuity.
All right, guys, we have to call it a day. We have to go back to Transsexual Transylvania and end the show here. You can find our show on Subspace Radio Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern in the United States, Friday mornings again at 9 a.m. in the UK, Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday afternoons at 4 p.m. We're on every other week. The other weeks we show TARDIS Travel Guide, where we go through different media's reviews for Doctor Who, which is a show I'm in as well. I want to thank you guys. Any final words?
It doesn't make any sense.
And we're stopping there. Vicky, you don't even get to say anything. I'm Mark Baumgarten, Vicky Jakubowski, Juan Sanmiguel. Until next time, bye, everyone. been listening to Mark Who 42. Your hosts, Mark Baumgarten, Vicky Jakubowski, Juan Sanmiguel, and Zion Quiros. Mark Who 42's universe is produced and directed by Mark Baumgarten. Copyright 2025.